Okay, let's unpack this. Pain, struggle, heartbreak. These are experiences most of us, well, we try to steer clear of them, right? At all costs.
Definitely. We tend to see them as purely negative forces, just obstacles standing between us and happiness.
But what if that perspective is missing something crucial?
That feels incredibly counterintuitive, doesn't it? Yet the source material we've been diving into explores this fascinating idea that heartbreak and deep suffering, while undeniably difficult, might sometimes be absolutely necessary.
Necessary catalysts, even for profound personal growth.
Exactly. This deep dive is all about taking that idea and really turning it over. We've got some compelling source material here that doesn't just hint at this. It actually lays out specific reasons why something so painful could be crucial for our development.
And our goal here really is not just to skim the surface, we want to dig in. Right.
Yeah, really unpack these points, understand some key distinctions the source makes, like the difference between pain and suffering, and pull out insights that could genuinely change how you think about navigating the toughest times in your own life.
So, the central question we're tackling today is, how can something that feels like the worst possible thing, like heartbreak, possibly be good for us in the long run?
It's a question with deep roots, actually. The source points out that poets and thinkers throughout history have wrestled with this.
Right, you see figures like Rumi, Khalil Gibran.
Fyodor Dostoevsky, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, even contemporary writers like C. Joybill C. They've all explored this idea that growth can be forged in the fire of struggle.
So, our source isn't presenting a brand new idea, really, but building on this long-standing perspective.
And just to be clear, the source isn't talking about literal biological growth, of course.
No, no.
This is specifically focused on growth of what it calls the mind, the heart, and the soul.
Precisely. And it breaks down this complex idea into 7 distinct reasons why heartbreak and suffering are often crucial for that kind of deep human development.
All right, let's jump into the first one. Reason number one that the source presents. Suffering is only necessary until we realize it isn't, but it usually takes something to make us realize that.
Okay, this point makes a really foundational distinction for the source's argument, and it's between pain and suffering.
Yes, pain is described as, well, a physiological or emotional sensation, something you don't necessarily choose.
Right. The source gives examples like the physical expression during intense experiences or how crying can be cathartic.
Or even just physical pain signaling danger. It keeps you alive. That's the pain part.
Right. Pain is a signal. It's information your system is giving you.
Yes. But suffering, according to this source, is fundamentally different. Suffering is defined specifically as resistance to pain.
Resistance. Okay.
And this is key. The source states that suffering is always of our own volition. You might not choose what causes you pain, the loss, the betrayal, the difficult circumstance, but you do choose whether you suffer from it.
By resisting that pain.
Exactly.
So the painful event or feeling itself might be unavoidable, but the suffering comes from our internal fight against it.
hmm
And the source suggests we often have to experience that struggle, that resistance, until a significant painful event finally makes us see that the choice to resist, to suffer, was there all along.
That's the idea. And that idea that we often don't realize we have a choice until pain forces the issue brings us right to the next point the source makes.
Which is about what we're really seeking.
Yes. Reason number two. Human beings think they are seeking happiness, but they are seeking comfort and familiarity above all else.
Oh, this one hits home. The source suggests we're actually pretty terrible at predicting what will genuinely make us happy in the future.
Because our view is limited, right, by our past experiences.
That's the core of it. We're culturally conditioned to plan for happiness, to chase it down, to choose paths we think will lead there.
But in practice, we often just end up choosing things that feel comfortable or familiar because they resemble something we've known before.
Even if those past experiences weren't genuinely happy ones.
Exactly. Because they represent comfort,
So we're chasing comfort that we've mislabeled as happiness.
essentially. The source argues that we won't be compelled to seek something genuinely greater, something truly aligned with actual fulfillment, until our current comfort zone becomes so painfully uncomfortable.
That staying there is no longer an option.
Right. It takes that level of genuine discomfort to finally break the powerful pull of familiarity.
That makes perfect sense. It's like staying in a job or a relationship that isn't working, not because it's good, but because it's, the devil you know.
Until the pain of staying outweighs the fear of leaving. Precisely.
Which leads us right into reason number 3.
Suffering teaches us that trying to change the external world to be happy is like trying to change the projection on the screen rather than the projector that's playing it.
Ah, the classic internal versus external focus.
Right. The source uses this powerful analogy. We often dig ourselves into a deeper hole by desperately trying to manipulate the world around us.
To conform to what we think will make us happy, constantly trying to change the projection on the screen.
Instead of looking at the lens through which we're viewing it all.
Exactly. The source quotes Byron Katie here, which perfectly captures the idea. Once we realize where the lint is, we can clear the lens itself.
This is the end of suffering and the beginning of a little joy in paradise.
So the lint isn't some problem out there in the world. It's something blocking our own internal lens or perception.
Yes, suffering, particularly deep heartbreak, can be the intense experience that finally forces us to stop frantically trying to rearrange the external world.
And instead turn inward, realizing that the real work is adjusting the projector, the lens of our own minds.
Okay, reason number 4. Often, suffering comes to us in the form of a breakdown, which is really just a breakthrough that we haven't seen the other side of yet.
This is a perspective shift. What feels like total collapse might actually be a process leading to something new.
The source suggests that sometimes, on a conscious level, we might not even know what's truly best for us or the direction we need to go.
But maybe a deeper, more instinctive part of us does.
That's the idea. What feels like a breakdown is actually our deeper self initiating a necessary breakthrough process.
We're just caught in the middle of it in the destruction phase and can't yet see the positive restructuring that's coming on the other side.
Exactly. The source even shared a personal reflection about knowing intuitively when it was time to break my own heart for the sake of something greater, even though they had no conscious idea what that greater thing was at the time.
That intuitive pull towards a painful but necessary change, even without a clear destination, that's really compelling. It suggests a kind of wisdom beneath our conscious thought.
It does. It implies that sometimes the most significant shifts are driven by a deeper knowing that bypasses our rational mind's limited understanding.
All right, reason number 5. A capacity to feel joy must be balanced by a capacity to know pain,
This speaks to the fundamental concept of duality, right?
which the source presents as being inherent in the natural world and certainly in our emotional landscape.
Like the idea that you can't truly appreciate the light without knowing the dark.
Precisely. The source posits that the greater your capacity to feel intense pain or experience darkness,
The greater the potential contrast available to perceive and appreciate intense joy.
so experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion, including the deepest pain, actually expands your capacity for the highest joy.
That's the source's argument. It suggests the yin-yang of our emotional selves is always in balance in terms of potential capacity.
Okay, so the potential is there.
Right. What we actually experience depends heavily on our perspective in any given moment. Both the capacity for intense pain and intense joy exist within us simultaneously.
The choice lies in where we focus our perspective.
That's a really challenging way to look at intense suffering, that the potential for immense joy is right there alongside it, and our perspective is the key.
It really shifts the locus of control back inward, doesn't it?
It does, which circles back beautifully to reason 3. Moving on to reason number 6. Pain is a signal that something's wrong. Suffering is what happens when we don't heed it.
So back to the signal idea, pain is the notification.
And suffering is the consequence of ignoring that notification.
Right.
The source takes this further by introducing a potentially difficult idea that sometimes we actually, perhaps subconsciously, create problems or pain for ourselves.
Because of a deep-seated, often inaccurate belief that we deserve punishment or retribution.
Exactly. Wow. So we might be self-sabotaging due to internal beliefs we're not even fully aware of.
The source suggests that grappling with this self-induced pain is a brutal but sometimes necessary way to finally confront and unlearn those harmful internal narratives.
It's presented as a path to realizing on a visceral level that you don't deserve that pain.
And in the process, reconnecting with who you authentically are, separate from the flawed self-image you might hold or the way you believe the world sees you.
That's incredibly powerful. It's like pain becomes this unavoidable mirror, forcing us to look at the internal stories we've been living by that aren't serving us.
Exactly. It forces that confrontation. And finally, reason number 7. The universe whispers until it screams.
This one feels quite evocative.
It does. The source suggests that major traumatic experiences like heartbreak are rarely isolated out of the blue events.
Right. Instead, they are often the culmination of long-standing patterns as unresolved issues compounding over time.
So it's not just one thing that suddenly breaks you, it's the weight of everything leading up to it.
Precisely. The heartbreak or the breakdown is described as the final hit, the one that finally forces you open.
It's the moment you realize, perhaps with piercing clarity, that you knew the truth about the situation, the pattern, or your needs all along.
You just ignore the earlier, quieter whispers, the smaller signals, the persistent discomforts, the intuitive nudges that something wasn't right.
So you break through only after you've been forced to break open because you ignored the earlier warnings.
That's the source's perspective. It concludes this point by reflecting on the difficult beauty of a system, whether you think of it as your own body, your emotional system, or, well, the universe.
A system that allows you to explore painful darkness, but then creates significant pain when it's truly time to return to the light, to health, to a more authentic path.
Yeah, and how striking it is that this profound transformative mechanism is often only explained or understood after you're already in the midst of the breakdown.
When it feels like you're almost too far gone to process it.
So pulling these 7 points together, the source really makes a case that suffering, and particularly experiences like heartbreak, aren't just random bad luck or things to simply endure.
No, they can function as this incredibly powerful, albeit brutal force that shatters our comfort zones.
Compels us to look inward, exposes hidden patterns and limiting beliefs.
And ultimately drives us towards deeper self-awareness and growth. It reframes these experiences not just as negatives, but as signals and catalysts.
Painful, yes, but potentially steering you towards a more authentic, resilient, and expanded version of yourself.
If you can move from resisting the pain to understanding what it's signaling.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave you with a thought to sit with.
Thinking about that idea from the source that the universe whispers before it screams, and that pain is often a signal we're ignoring.
What signals, whispers, or perhaps even discomforts might you be experiencing right now in your own life?
What might those be trying to show you about yourself, about your current path, or about where you might be resisting a change that is ultimately necessary for your growth?
Reflect on that distinction between pain, the unavoidable sensation or signal, and suffering, the resistance to it.
Where might you be holding on, pushing back against a signal that, while painful, could ultimately lead to a breakthrough if you chose to heed it and understand its message?